would you please start by introducing yourself?
Good morning. My name is Mukami McCrum. Most people these days call me Chocho, which is grandmother. So I'm Chocho Mukami. One of the traditions in our background, my people is as you grow old, you acquire many titles and different titles. But I think Chocho is the latest one I've got. I don't think I'm going to get another one because that's sort of yeah. If I live long enough, I'll be grandma, great grandma. So there'll be another one coming. Yes, I was born and raised in Kenya, and I have been in Scotland longer than I lived in my country of origin, which sometimes makes me sad because I never really immigrated to stay here. I never intended to live here, and that was not the purpose of coming here. I have my passion and really my professional training, and which is here my passion, is teaching. So I'm really interested in education, in learning, for myself as well as for other people. I always feel I learn every day, and you can't, to say I know sort of denies me the opportunity to learn something different, a different perspective from somebody else. Yes, I have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. And I have worked in various sectors, from the voluntary sector to local government and to the Scottish government. And yes, maybe you should ask me more questions.
Yes. So that was very good. Hello, Mukami. Nice to meet you. I'm Senanu Torjo, recently graduated artist, and yeah, just that's me. I would like to ask, how did you end up in Scotland? So what brought you here and what made you stay?
I came with my husband. Actually, we only came to visit, to stay for a year, because we were both teachers in Kenya, and we're trying to get another contract. My husband is Scottish, was Scottish. He passed away 2 years ago, this month actually. When the children were born, one of our children was born in Kenya, the other one was born here. As they were growing, it became much more difficult to keep relocating. It was because we could only go away when they were in school. So in terms of staying, it was circumstances more than a plan to stay. The joke in my family is whenever things were not very good here in Scotland, I used to tell him, of all the schools in the world, why did you come to teach in mine? I think I was trying to borrow the line from Humphrey Bogart's film Casablanca, only it wasn't amusing, I don't think so. I started life change, my whole life changed. I usually say that 8 hours flight from Nairobi to Scotland, to London, and then to Scotland, completely deleted who I was in terms of how I was perceived here. You know, for example, I could not work in Scotland because I was not GTC registered, and I could not teach. Also, I had a young son, so my whole life sort of was put on hold while I was examining what I was going to do. And as I said, because I had not planned to come and stay, I did not have a grand blueprint of what my life was going to be like at the time.
Yeah. Oh. So as you were saying, you felt that your identity had somewhat been erased whilst from the move, the really big move from Nairobi to Scotland. While over the years and while you've been adapting and changing and basically, you know, living here in Scotland, how would you categorize your identity now that you're here?
I think it's more to do with my status that changed at the time, and I'll explain what I mean in a sense that who I was and who I believed I was and who my people believed I was not what people perceived here. I said I was a teacher, but to even get a supermarket job was a big thing. It was difficult for me, you know. So I lost my status. At that time, at the time in Kenya, being a teacher was, especially a young African teacher, was high status job because then my country was just beginning to employ Black professionals at the time. Most of the previous professional jobs were occupied by Europeans or Asians. So and to come and find to lose all that is what I mean by status. My status changed, and I had to reinvent or reinvention implies a complete changeover, but some aspect of me had to change.
Yeah.
I had to think of it.
So
In terms of my
rebuilding.
identity, in terms of my identity, I describe it in two ways. There are fixed aspects of my identity which don't change. Who I am, you know, Mukami, I was born Mukami Wadegwa, you know, of the Kikuyu people who live on the slopes of Mount Kenya. And that an African woman. So that is my core, who I am in terms of my people, who I am. The other identities change all the time, or rather you acquire the identity. For example, when I said at one time I was a daughter and then I became a wife. And then when I became a teacher, that was another identity. When I came to Scotland, one of the identity I don't like very much is that woman. You know, when people didn't know how to describe me or didn't know, or the ones happy about, you know, challenging them is that woman. I other identities were imposed on me, like minority status. In Kenya, I was part of the majority, so I never felt that sense. And maybe younger people growing up here have a different perspective, but I have that feeling of being in majority and then suddenly being called a minority. And actually some people insisted I was Afro-Caribbean, which I kept saying, no, I am African. Caribbean is a different part of the world altogether. Yeah, so you know, being working, being a CEO, being a civil servant, all those were different identities which keep changing and might change tomorrow again. And grandmother is another identity, as I said, might change tomorrow. So yeah, and I also, if I may, I do worry much. Identity is very important because if we don't know who we are, then everybody decides who we are. And then it means we don't know our story, we don't know our history or culture. Uh, and we are bound to just acquire anything. But it concerns me when identities are used to exclude. Because if I say I'm Kenyan and you're Ghanaian, I am. I can say it in a way that I'm celebrating. We are both from Africa, but we come from different parts of Africa. But I can say it in a way that I am distancing myself from you. And people tend to do that. You'll hear people saying, "Oh, okay, oh, you're Kenyan." Somebody will say, "Oh, you're Nigerian, you're South African," but there is always a kind of but in it. So it's something I like to discuss more, perhaps another time. But to me, identity is a very interesting subject, and I don't like the way the system and for ease just lump us all together in one group and assume. And because even so when we say we are African, we are really simplifying things for people. Because Africa, as you know, even my own country, there are so many different ethnic groups and cultures and languages and music and food. And that's why I said I'm from a particular group in Kenya. So when then they add other titles on, like some I really don't like BAME, which actually excludes Africans because we are not named there. I don't know, or
it's Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. That's what BAME stands for.
There's no African, but to say Black is African is wrong because not all Black people are Africans. And Africa has people who are not Black, indigenous. Indigenous, and I don't mean Arabs because people get mixed up. Indigenous people of North Africa are not Arabs and they are not Black. So we have to. I prefer we will identify more with our people, with who we are than. But obviously, if you ask me to describe what I look like, if I went missing and the police wants or anybody is looking for me, you will say definitely, well, I'm Black or light skinned, brown or whatever color you want to describe somebody is. And that is purely for perhaps for appearance rather than for your ethnic origin. I don't know whether that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does, because when people are maybe describing you to a friend or to a family member, or, you know, be in a sense of appearance or maybe in a sense of background or just how you are as a person, they will attach, you know, your Blackness and your Africanness to that description. So if they're like saying, oh, you know, Mukami, you know, the Kenyan one, you know, the one with the coily hair, the Black one, she wears glasses, you know, it would come up like that naturally, just to, you know, distinguish yourself from whoever else they were trying to distinguish you from. And such a sense of identity is so heavily attached, especially in a society where you are considered a minority. It's very, very prominent. I've noticed, you know, I recently went back home to Ghana, and actually I came back last week, a week today.
Yes, I know.
And going back home after so long, 16 years, after being away from home, and then going home and finding out that you're not a minority, like that change, you know, just being amongst your people and feeling like, you know, you're where you're supposed to be, only to come back again, you know, and noticing how stark the difference is against you and the others around you. It's quite it's a culture shock, but also really, really eye-opening to see how much, you know, when we're living in a society where you are a minority, it emphasizes how much we ourselves internalize that, and how much we ourselves are so aware of that, but we we
Mhm.
forget that we are aware of it just to cope, in the
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and and on that is also something that makes me really sad is that, as you're saying, I remembered if people are describing you or me, they would not say Sanamu, the one who wrote the book, or
yeah,
the one who studied art,
yeah,
or Mukami who worked for the Scottish government.
yeah,
It's as if we have no other attributes
yeah,
other than color or hair. But if you're describing, if somebody is telling you, do you know so and so from another community, they would attach achievements to them.
achievement to it. Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Rather than they wouldn't be trying to tell you the shade of color of their skin. They would be saying the one who worked for so and so, or the who did this. There would be more to do with that connection of achievement, and rather than just the stereotypical.
Yeah,
And I think also I also get concerned because in the beginning, Black was used to unify everybody. It was supposed to be a political term to galvanize movement. This is my early days. But as we were beginning to make a difference, some communities started saying, "Oh, we don't want to be called Black because we're not Africans." They started. That's what I mean by the differences of people start attaching to
yeah,
something.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
so actually you're completely right. I'm interrupting. But even in surveys that we do, it's like select which ethnicity you are, and then they'll have the ethnicities, and then they'll be like Black African, Black American, Black Caribbean, just that kind of separation, something so small as that. We don't actively notice it, but it
but
is
but
still
who
there.
is when they say Black African? What is the other African?
So then they say Black American, Black Caribbean, uh, um, yeah, I think, and then there's also just the option of just black, which I don't
But
understand.
I understand. I understand Black American if they
Yeah,
want to be also Black Caribbean because there are other indigenous peoples in America.
yeah, exactly,
But we Africans, why are we Black Africans? Why are we not African? Who is the other type of African?
exactly.
And you
So
see that's the other thing because it was attached to us because some people in Africa don't want to be mistaken for like those blacks as they used to
yes,
call them.
yes,
And it really was also more categories in South Africa than anywhere else. And it was more again divisive. And if you look again, when you come to BME or BAME, it's those are new term, newish, because people in other communities insisted they wanted to be known by their ethnic origin or their continent,
yeah,
but not by color.
yeah,
But this is what I ask: why do Africans accept labels attached to us by other people which are meaningless, which are divisive, and which don't include us?
yeah. The thing is, it's a sad fact, but it's still a fact that we are so used to being labeled, from such a tragic and sad past of like colonialism, slavery, since those times, maybe even before those times, we when, people invaded our country and stole people, from their homes, to make them slaves. That's when these attachments and when these differences were so forcefully imposed on us, So since we've ever since we've been introduced into the westernized society, into the Western world, into the white world, we've been we've been brought with these labels, and we've been attached to these labels, and ever since, our ancestors have stayed here, their names changing, ever since, we had like Black Africans, Black Americans, I'm sorry, you know, became to be, that label has stuck, and the need to be labeled has also been attached to us, you know. So when we're so obviously different in a society, you know, subconsciously from, you know, from everywhere around us, we're being forced to want to be labeled, which
Perhaps
is
we need to be,
also,
yeah, perhaps we need to become more assertive like other
yeah,
people then, because, and also know our history, because you're right, it's we have internalized
yeah,
oppression to a position where we oppress ourselves. But if you look at the African Americans, you know, all the way back to the slaves, and you know, in the beginning, but the slaves were called Africans, and then were called other names, which we're not going to mention here, came along, and as a people consciousness grew, this issues of identity became important to the Africans who were taken as slaves, stolen, and then they started calling the, you know, black and beautiful and all that
yes,
came, and to a point where now they are calling them African Americans because they are connecting with the continent.
yes,
And I find that people who are proud of being African or being Caribbean will insist on being called, regardless of where they come from, of where they live, they'll insist on being called linked to the continent.
yes,
I do understand some people generations down the line no longer have allegiance either to the Caribbean or to Africa, so they just want to be called Black British,
yeah,
and that's okay. But I think if them then if Bame included Black, African, Asian, minority,
yeah,
ethnic, I would be quite happy. Is this assumption that Black covers all of us? Well, it should only include the people who do not have allegiance to either the continent, the
yeah,
African continent, or the Caribbean. It does not include everybody else.
yeah,
And also the that sense of identity people feel when Americans, African Americans, I know friends tell me that they looked at, well, every other community in America calls itself in relation to where they came from.
yeah,
You have Korean Americans, they're very proud of that connection.
yeah,
And Irish Americans. So that kind of thing is what perhaps maybe you younger people, younger generation need to do more work on enlightenment so that you take away what the legacy left behind by the people who didn't have a choice but to accept the labels.
yeah,
I do honor the people before me because what they endured was much more than we do. And they may have accepted the labels because of fear, needing a job, a host of, but we are in a better position than you're a much better position than we are, you younger people, to change to have the identity that means something to you, to us all.
yeah. Yes, you're really quite right. I think it's starting slowly, even with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's slowly moving towards that direction where um maybe we're working towards either a future where we're all included and we won't need to, you know, differentiate ourselves, you know, or, you know, so actively fight for our identities. Um, and I think um, we definitely need, I feel the progress that we're making to make ourselves known, to make ourselves um, uh, experience a better and fairer society for Black and ethnic people is also somehow emphasizing how different we are, which is, you know, it's fine, it's good, but also at the same time, how would that look in the future? You know, how will that be when, you know, after all these movements, how will we end up? Will we still be BAME, or will we be something else? These attempts of society trying to include us
Yeah, you see, I
sometimes
think,
feels like it excludes
yeah,
us more. Yeah.
yeah, you're right. I think sometimes the name we choose to use,
Yeah.
how some are more emotive than others. If we talked about the variety of people as opposed to differences,
Yeah.
because we have a lot more in common and we're different. We just have to have the variety simply because of geography sometimes, because a Ghanaian child born in Kenya without Ghanaian parents we never know anything other than being
Yeah.
Kenyan. So
Exactly.
but or a Kenyan child born in Ghana, if somebody adopted a child from Kenya, they would not, they may go and find Kenya 20, 30 years later, but they would grow up thinking they were Ghanaians.
Yeah.
So I think that difference is more, but because variety is very good, because variety means that we are bringing together a whole lot of valuable issues. Where the problem with the difference, it always assumes something is better than.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. What we need to find is more commonality than differences between us.
And the music from West Africa and music from East Africa, most like when you play together, the fusion is fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah.
But to actually, if we started saying, oh, East African is better than West African, then there's conflict.
Yes. Yes.
This one thing is what we're looking for that determines the outcome. And because we lived, as you said, for centuries under this banner of we are inferior,
yeah,
and other people are superior, that has had a huge impact on the way we see ourselves and how we see our music, our culture, our literature, in all that. Our education system has, they are all linked to the difference, superior and inferior. And what I want to come is on par. And that's what I've been working for all my life, is equity, where when I fight racism, I don't want to be racist to people who've been racist to me. What I want to do is racism to stop, so that I am treated equally, in the sense that if I go for a job, I'll get it on merit. And I will not be denied the job because of my skin color. That is what I think to me is important, is bringing that human rights based angle, that we are all human.
Yeah. Yes, that is a very great point. So as you were saying, your work with trying to bring that equality, so that we aren't differentiated by how we look. How do you think that your experiences in Scotland inform, or so like your experiences in Scotland these past years, how do you think that they inform the work you do, and how it's come to be today?
Yeah. Well, you see, I became an activist by default. It wasn't really a plan. It was more to do with reacting to what was happening to me and my children, the racism we experience, and the fact that my children, for example, being involved in anti-racist education in schools was because of the way my children experience racism in schools, coming home all the time, having had problems, and always being the teachers not, perhaps not understanding, but blaming them for reacting to racism is as a mother, I just had to to do something about it, and also what was happening to me as well. I won't go into the details of that, of at the moment, if you don't mind. But but at the same time, when I told you I was reinventing myself, I joined the women's movement and the trade union movement to learn more about. In fact, I joined any group that was I could hear they were complaining about either sexism or racism or poverty, those kind of things, because they affected me, and they affected other people like me. I knew. So and I think the direction of travel in my campaign was always about, I never felt inferior. I never felt I don't deserve. And I used to feel really sad when we try to invite people to come to campaign with us, and they will say, "Oh no, no, no! This is their country. I don't want any trouble. I'm only a student. I'm going back home." You know, and I understand people have to choose the battle they need to take, and it's because it becomes really a matter of your conscience, and rather than saying everybody has to be involved in a struggle. But I can't. You ask me my achievements. I can't sort of. I've done so many things. It's impossible to just choose one. But if you put them all together, I was given an award by the Queen because of it was human rights and community development, and that is, I have always, at one time I realized just raising the voice, saying this is happening, raising awareness was not enough. We needed to, our communities needed to also be prepared to engage with the system, whether it is upskilling, getting better education so you can get better jobs. To have doctors working those days in really low paid job in supermarkets, or even in my case as a teacher, to come and end up working in a supermarket was not good use of skills or talent or experience, and I also felt, but clearly most of the time there was racism in employment, but much more so for me was, if we get all the qualifications they need, then they cannot, if they tell us that you're not qualified, then we can fight them in the courts, because it was law against discrimination. But you couldn't, I did not think you should just get a job because you are a Black woman or an African woman, or you know, that is not what we were fighting for. We were fighting for equity, which also was linked to competence, was linked to and knowledge and knowing how the system works. And one of the things perhaps I could say that I think has always been very important to me is knowing facts. Because sometimes if you know facts, if you know how the system works, then you can point out how it can be changed. But if we're just reacting to something, then we always lose. Because we need to know how the landscape is. It's like going into the battlefield. We need to know what the enemy weapons the enemy is carrying, so that we know how to defend ourselves. And that's not a very good example. I don't like the whole idea of violence, but it's sometimes fighting racism, fighting sexism, violence against women is a battle. In a way, because it's a battle brought to us. It's not a battle we start, but it is like that. So it was, I have worked locally on policies and on also campaigned. Like, for example, I was one of the people who campaigned for Ahmed Sheikh, was the first Black man to be murdered in Edinburgh, and in 1989, and they were we had to campaign to make sure that it was identified as a racist killing, which was, and so and this is what I was saying, like when Black Lives Matters, when here again, the whole campaign, I was telling people this is not the first killing. You know, we had for many years campaigned about Black deaths in custody, but many people never noticed that. And in a way, I'm hoping that the Black Lives Matter will now move away from the sort of piecemeal way. We do things here to change the system half-heartedly. Stephen Lawrence murder, I was also involved in the campaign. In fact, I was the first person to bring Doreen Lawrence to Scotland to speak at our conference. We had so much hope because we believed the recommendations, if they had been carried out, we would be in a better place now.
Yeah.
But somehow it's always difficult to know who are the decision makers now who water down anything like that. Why people now speak as if they have just discovered racism worries me a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's been there for a long time, and we had policies and policies, and we don't need any more new strategies. We've got so many strategies already. so yeah, I was also involved in setting up the first refuge for battered women in Edinburgh. Mostly for minority ethnic women. I was one of the people who set it up, and that was also a response to what we found really horrifying, that there was so much violence against women here. And if you're from minority background, you also suffered racism as well, and cultural differences and all those kind of complicated matters. And the fact that you didn't have family or anybody to support you also created such a problem for the people. So yeah, I have worked, I said locally and also nationally, because I was on, when I mentioned Stephen Lawrence, I was a member of Home Office Race Relations Forum at the time. I have worked for the Churches Commission for Racial Justice in Scotland, and in UK and in Scotland, and Churches Commission for Migrants in Europe, World Council of Churches. So I have been involved and a whole lot of programs on conflict, overcoming conflicts. So I have been kind of doing a lot of things, but they all relate to my passion for human rights. Injustice is something that keeps me awake. But I've also learned a lot from all that. In the what I tell young people now is that put the oxygen mask before you put on somebody else. We didn't have the support that there is now, when it was so easy to burn out. And also I think the sad thing for me was I did not realize just how aggressive people would be, and how they would react to us pointing out that what they were doing was not right. And this aggression was not just from the Scots or the Europeans. It was also sometimes from other ethnic groups, and even from our own people who felt we were
disturbing the peace.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Or sometimes threatening their jobs
yeah,
because they thought that they have managed to get a nice job somewhere, and if we make noise in that department and they have never complained, they don't
yeah,
look good. So, and also people in power, regardless of their color, do not like being challenged. Those are the kind of, so I'm not saying we don't challenge them, but if I was, there was nobody mentoring us.
yeah.
We were really just going in the
Going,
dark,
yeah, going in
driven,
blind. Yeah,
yeah, driven by injustice, and therefore, and you say something which is true, which is a fact,
yeah,
but it would offend somebody,
yeah,
and then you find you got people. Not that it stopped me, but it's just looking back. I would ask, I would, if I'm mentoring people, I just say, okay, let's strategize.
yeah,
Let's think about how to win this battle without too many bruises on ourselves.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. I think that's how we need to move forward now, especially with the Black Lives Movement, uh, the Black Lives Matter movement, especially with it being so prominent now, and so many countries and continents are working to make changes. Um, Instead, we did the part where we did our protests, went outside, spoke our voices, but now the way we need to move forward is to exactly strategize, to know exactly what's going on in the system and how that affects us and how that will affect us if new mandates or new rules are introduced. um it's better to move forward smartly. So work smart, not hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
I always think of the story of the tortoise and the hare, but that's a story
exactly.
for another day.
Exactly. And yeah, so out of all your activism and all your teaching, and even all of that combined, um, what would you think would be your most significant contribution to Scottish society, or your most the contribution that you're most proud of? Um, yeah.
It's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Actually, I leave that to people to tell me. Um, I think being given an award, although it's controversial in some ways because of the empire link to it,
Yeah.
it is was for me an indicator that I was making a difference. And also because I never, say for example, if I was on a policy group somewhere, I never sort of joined a policy group to win anything or
Yeah.
I really, I can tell you, I really don't like all those prima donnas we have of people who, when the issue becomes more important than the person, the person becomes more important than the issue.
Yeah.
And we have a lot on, and in fact, I don't know, in some BLM, sometimes I was frustrated to see it is as if it was a photo shoot for some people rather than a campaign for life. And
Yeah.
I was quite surprised when I got the award, because to me, I don't even want to say what people keep saying. I was just doing my job. I wasn't even doing a job. I was just raising concern about and campaigning and suggesting alternative ways of doing things,
Yeah.
to more inclusive ways. So I think I would think not alone, single-handedly, definitely not. I've been part of a movement, of group of people
Yeah.
who made a difference in that the in the Scottish government and in various places now, you'll find policies and some mention some work, some work we did to change the society, the system. If history were to be written in a fair way, we would be part of that history, you know, of trying to, for me for me and my children and my people to be seen as human beings, and to live and to be judged. Because you see the whole idea of, if I make a mistake, it should be seen I've made a mistake because I'm human, but not because I'm that Black woman. You know, color has nothing to do with the achievements I make or the mistakes I make. So it's really difficult to pinpoint one thing, and maybe I'll remember at midnight. So many, but I think I've been happy in when I hear somebody say, "Oh, it's because of you." This is, for example, from violence against women. I'm still alive. I feel happy about that. You know, when people say that they went for a job, they changed they moved from. Yes, I remember one woman one time told me, I taught her to use emails, and then she became a, a fiend email, which was for sending emails everywhere. And another woman told me how I encouraged her to stop just being a battered woman, and she ended up becoming a nursery nurse. You know, so she believed what I said, because I was trying to say, if you're a victim of violence, don't let it define you. You can always become you are somebody before violence. It stops you from developing, from achieving, but you can go back to that. And she's with maybe little support, a lot of energy from her, she went to did A levels or O levels and O levels HNC, and she did a course on nursing, and so those kind of little things. That's what I'm saying. I can't put a flag on the top of that mountain behind me. This my mountain, Mount Kenya. But it's many little things that
that creates a big
and I think so. The fact that I have survived. Somebody told me somebody lived here for a year, and she went back and she said, "You have survived Scotland for so long. You need a medal."
You have survived and you have prospered. You know, you have done so many things and impacted so many lives. And maybe some of those people haven't had a chance to tell you, but with all your activism and with all even your teaching, you're bound to, you know, touch so many people's lives and encourage them to follow their dream. And as you said, you know, the encouragement would have been just what they needed for them to thrive, to become nursery nurses, you know, to become more than they ever thought that they could be. So, you know, it's people like you that, you know, encourage, you know, somebody, a young youth like me, to basically do things like this and to, you know, strive to make a change and strive to be the best that we can be. So first and foremost, thank you. And thank you for doing so much for, you know, for so many people, and for, you know, for encouraging so many people and touching so many lives.
I applaud you. And can I say also, all this happens because of people like you, because you know, you take things and run with them. You know, the same thing could be said. Even the best teacher in the world, the difference they make depends on the pupils. And I really admire you and the young people who are trying to make a difference. Because it makes it all worth it. You know.